I watched in horror as Sheriff Corinne stood in my driveway, holding a clipboard and wearing that smug smile I had come to hate. Behind her, 3 patrol cars blocked the street while neighbors gathered on their porches to stare. She cleared her throat and announced loud enough for everyone to hear. By order of the county sheriff department, this illegal postal operation is hereby shut down. My garage, my perfectly legal garage where I sold furniture online, she was calling it a post office. That was the moment I knew Corinne had finally lost her mind. 6 months earlier, life was simple. I had my morning coffee routine, my weekend garage projects, and my small online furniture business that kept me busy in retirement. My garage was my sanctuary. Shelves lined every wall, holding vintage lamps I had restored, antique chairs I had reupholstered, and small collectibles I had found at estate sales across 3 counties. Every morning, I would roll up the garage door and sort through my latest finds. The UPS truck knew my address well. Package deliveries came twice a week, sometimes 3 times when I had a good week of sales. Buyers would drive from neighboring towns to pick up their purchases. It was honest work that kept my mind sharp and my bank account stable. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I was photographing a Victorian end table when I noticed the patrol car creeping slowly down my street. It stopped directly in front of my house and sat there for nearly 10 minutes. Through my garage opening, I could see the driver watching me. Sheriff Corinne finally stepped out of her vehicle. She was a tall woman with graying hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that seemed to search for trouble wherever she looked. I had seen her around town, but never spoken to her directly. "Morning, officer," I called out, wiping my hands on a rag. "Beautiful day, is it not?" She approached with measured steps, her hand resting on her duty belt. "I have been getting reports about unusual activity at this address." I stopped what I was doing and turned to face her fully. "What kind of reports?" "Package deliveries. Multiple people coming and going. Looks like some kind of business operation running out of a residential area." Her tone suggested I was already guilty of something, though I could not imagine what. I gestured toward my organized garage workspace. "I restore furniture and sell it online. Everything you see here is perfectly legal. I have all my receipts and tax documentation if you need to see them." Corinne walked closer, peering into my garage like she was inspecting a crime scene. She picked up one of my business cards from the workbench and studied it. "How many packages do you receive per week?" "Maybe 6 or 8. Sometimes more if I find good pieces at estate sales." "And how many people come to pick up items?" "It depends on what I sell. Could be 3 or 4 buyers in a week." She made notes on a small pad, nodding as if my answers confirmed her suspicions. The whole interaction felt surreal. I was being interrogated for running a legitimate small business from my own property. "I am going to be keeping an eye on this situation," she said, tapping her pen against the notepad. "Make sure everything stays above board." I watched her walk back to her patrol car, confused by the entire encounter. As she drove away, I noticed Mrs. Henderson from across the street standing in her yard, staring at my garage with newfound suspicion. That night, I could not shake the feeling that something had shifted in my quiet neighborhood. Corinne's visit felt like more than routine police work. It felt personal. 2 weeks later, Corinne returned with backup. I was pricing a set of dining chairs when I heard car doors slamming in my driveway. Through the garage opening, I saw 2 patrol cars and 3 officers walking toward me. Corinne led the group, carrying a folder thick with paperwork. Behind her walked Deputy Martinez, a young man who looked uncomfortable and another officer I did not recognize. "Sir, we need to discuss your postal operation," Karen announced. I set down my pricing gun and stared at her. "My what?" "Your illegal postal operation. We have documented evidence of mail sorting, package distribution, and unauthorized postal services being conducted on this property." The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. I blinked several times, certain I had misheard her. "Officer, I think there has been some kind of mistake. I do not operate any postal services. I restore furniture and sell it online." Karen opened her folder and pulled out photographs. They were pictures of my garage taken from the street, showing UPS trucks making deliveries and customers loading purchases into their vehicles. "These images clearly show postal vehicles making regular deliveries to your residence. We have documented multiple individuals picking up packages and mail from your property. Your garage has been converted into an unauthorized mail distribution center." I looked at Deputy Martinez, hoping to see some sign that he recognized the absurdity of these accusations. His expression remained neutral, but I caught him glancing away when our eyes met. "Those are furniture deliveries," I explained slowly. "People buy tables and chairs from me online. They come to pick them up. This is not a post office." Karen shook her head like I was lying to her face. "Sir, we have observed systematic mail sorting activities, regular package distribution, and multiple daily visits from postal service vehicles. Your garage shelving system clearly indicates organized mail storage and distribution." She pointed at my organized shelves, as if they were evidence of federal crimes. "Those shelves hold furniture and antiques that I sell," I said, my voice rising slightly. "This is my workshop and storage area." "The pattern of activity at this location matches known characteristics of unauthorized postal facilities," Karen continued. "We have reports from neighbors about increased traffic, commercial vehicle parking, and suspicious mail handling activities." I felt my face growing hot. "What neighbors? Who reported this?" "That information is confidential. What matters is that you are operating outside the bounds of residential zoning laws and federal postal regulations." Karen pulled out another document and handed it to me. It was typed on official letterhead and filled with legal language I could barely understand. "This is a cease and desist order. All postal operations must stop immediately. Any further violation will result in federal charges and property seizure." My hands shook as I read the document. Words like unauthorized mail facility and postal service violations jumped off the page. "This is insane," I said. "You cannot seriously believe my garage is a post office." "The evidence speaks for itself," Karen replied. "You have 72 hours to comply with this order." As the officers walked back to their vehicles, I stood in my garage surrounded by furniture and antiques, holding a legal document that accused me of running an illegal postal operation. Deputy Martinez paused at the edge of my driveway and looked back at me. For just a moment, his expression softened. "Maybe you should talk to a lawyer," he said quietly. Within days, my peaceful neighborhood became a surveillance zone. Karen's patrol car appeared on my street every morning at 8 and again every evening at 6. She parked directly across from my house and sat there for 30 minutes at a time, writing notes and taking photographs. The harassment escalated quickly. When the UPS driver arrived with a delivery of lamp parts I had ordered, Karen intercepted him at my mailbox. "What are you delivering to this address?" she demanded. The confused driver looked between Karen and me. "Just some parts for antique lamps. Same stuff I deliver here every couple weeks. This property is under investigation for postal violations. I need to inspect that package. I watched from my garage as Corinne forced the driver to show her the shipping label and describe the contents. The entire interaction took 15 minutes and left the UPS driver shaking his head as he drove away. The next day, a customer arrived to pick up a rocking chair she had purchased online. Before she could reach my garage, Corinne appeared and blocked her car in the driveway. "Ma'am, are you here to collect mail or packages?" The customer looked terrified. "I bought a rocking chair. I am just here to pick it up." This property is operating as an unauthorized postal facility. I need to see identification and documentation of your business here. I rushed out to intervene, but Corinne held up her hand to stop me. "Sir, step back. This is official police business." The customer, a grandmother who had driven 40 minutes to collect her purchase, sat in her car while Corinne interrogated her about postal services and mail collection. After 20 minutes of questions, Corinne finally allowed her to complete the transaction, but not before warning her about participating in illegal postal activities. The woman never returned for the matching end table she had also purchased. Corinne recruited allies in her campaign. Mrs. Henderson from across the street began keeping detailed logs of every vehicle that visited my property. She would stand in her front yard with a notebook, writing down license plate numbers and timing each visit. Mr. Kowalski from 2 houses down started calling in noise complaints whenever I used power tools in my garage. The city code enforcement officer visited 3 times in 1 week, each time finding nothing wrong but still writing up minor violations for things like garage door left open during business hours and excessive signage because of a small estate sale poster I had taped to my mailbox. The psychological pressure was relentless. Every morning, I would check my street before opening my garage door. Every delivery truck that approached made my heart race. Every customer visit became a potential confrontation with Corinne or her growing network of neighborhood informants. Sleep became difficult. I would lie awake at night wondering what new accusation Corinne would invent, what obscure regulation she would claim I was violating, what innocent activity she would twist into evidence of criminal behavior. The worst part was the isolation. Neighbors who had once waved and made small talk now avoided eye contact. The mail carrier started leaving packages at the end of my driveway instead of bringing them to my door. Even the UPS driver began asking if there was somewhere else he could deliver my packages. 3 weeks into Corinne's surveillance campaign, I realized that her goal was not to enforce legitimate laws. She wanted to destroy my business and drive me out of the neighborhood. The question was why. I spent my first sleepless night in weeks hunched over my computer, diving deep into federal postal regulations. If Corinne wanted to play legal games, I would learn the rules better than she knew them herself. The United States Postal Service website became my Bible. I read every regulation about mail handling, package distribution, and residential postal activities. I printed dozens of pages covering everything from private mailbox regulations to home-based business postal requirements. The more I read, the angrier I became. Nothing I was doing violated any postal regulation. Home-based businesses could receive packages. Customers could pick up purchases from residential properties. Private individuals could have items shipped to their homes for resale. Every single activity Corinne had cited as evidence of illegal postal operations was explicitly protected under federal law. I called the local post office and spoke with the postmaster. When I described Corinne's accusations, There was a long silence on the phone. "Let me understand this correctly," the postmaster said. "This sheriff claims your garage is operating as an unauthorized post office because you receive packages and have people pick up items they purchased from you." "That is exactly what she claims." "Sir, that is not how postal law works. You are describing normal home-based business activities. There is nothing illegal about receiving packages or having customers collect purchases from your property." I asked him to put his statement in writing. Within 2 hours, I had an official letter from the postmaster confirming that my activities did not violate any postal regulations and that no permits or special authorization were required for my type of business. But I did not stop there. I called the regional postal inspector's office and described the situation in detail. The inspector was baffled. "A local sheriff is claiming someone's garage is an illegal post office. I have been doing this job for 15 years, and I have never heard anything like that." He agreed to review Corinne's cease and desist order. His response came back the same day. "This document contains multiple factual errors about postal law and cites non-existent regulations. The activities described are completely legal." Armed with official documentation, I began building my case. I set up a hidden camera in my garage window to record Corinne's daily surveillance activities. I photographed her intercepting my deliveries and harassing my customers. I collected witness statements from confused UPS drivers and intimidated buyers. The pattern that emerged was disturbing. Corinne was not just wrong about postal law. She was actively using her badge to harass a law-abiding citizen. Every interaction was designed to intimidate, embarrass, and economically damage my legitimate business. I discovered something else during my investigation. Corinne owned rental properties throughout the county, including several that she had converted into commercial spaces for antique dealers and furniture restorers. My successful online business was direct competition to her tenants. The pieces fell into place. This was not about postal violations or zoning laws. This was about eliminating business competition using the power of her badge. I spent hours documenting Corinne's financial conflicts of interest. Public records showed her rental income from antique dealers. Property tax records revealed her ownership of commercial buildings that housed furniture restoration businesses. She had a direct economic incentive to shut down home-based competitors like me. Late one evening, as I organized my evidence files, I realized I had enough documentation to prove Corinne's harassment was both illegal and financially motivated. I had official statements from postal authorities, video evidence of her misconduct, witness testimony from delivery drivers, and financial records showing her conflicts of interest. But I also realized that filing official complaints would take months to resolve, during which Corinne could continue destroying my business and terrorizing my customers. I needed something faster and more direct. That is when I had the idea that would change everything. If Corinne insisted my garage was a post office, then I would give her exactly what she claimed to want. I would make her fantasy become her worst nightmare. I stayed up until 3 in the morning crafting my plan. It was simple, legal, and absolutely diabolical. Corinne had created this problem with her own words. She would solve it the same way. I spent the next morning crafting the perfect advertisements. If Sheriff Corinne insisted my garage was a post office, then I would advertise it exactly as she claimed. My first post went live on Craigslist at noon. Free postal services, unclaimed package pickup, county-designated post office facility, sheriff-approved operations. Come collect your lost mail and packages. All services free. I posted similar ads on Facebook Marketplace, community bulletin boards, and neighborhood apps. Each advertisement emphasized that my garage had been officially designated as a postal facility by Sheriff Corinne herself, and that all services were free and sheriff-approved. The genius of my plan was its perfect logic. If Corinne claimed my garage was a post office, then surely people should be able to come there for postal services. If she had designated it as such, then she had created a public facility that must serve the community. I made sure to include her name and badge number in each advertisement, noting that Sheriff Corinne had personally investigated and confirmed that my garage was operating as a postal facility. Anyone with questions about services should contact her directly. The first visitor arrived within 2 hours. An elderly man knocked on my garage door and asked about collecting his Social Security check. The advertisement said this was a post office. I have been having trouble with mail delivery at my apartment complex. I smiled and handed him one of Corinne's business cards. You need to speak with Sheriff Corinne. She is the one who designated my garage as a postal facility. Her number is right there on the card. The man looked confused but took the card and left. 30 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Corinne. "What the hell do you think you are doing?" she screamed. "I am operating the postal facility you designated," I replied calmly. "I have people coming for postal services, just like you said they were already doing." "You cannot advertise postal services. That is illegal." "But Corinne, you officially documented that my garage is already operating as a post office. I am just making it public knowledge. If people want postal services from the facility you designated, they should contact you since you are the authority who made that determination." There was silence on the phone. I could hear her breathing heavily. "Take down those advertisements immediately." "I cannot do that, Corinne. You have official documentation stating that my garage is a postal facility. If I remove the advertisements, I would be denying postal services to the public. That would actually be illegal." I hung up the phone and waited. More visitors arrived throughout the afternoon. A young mother looking for her child's school enrollment packet, a small business owner searching for missing shipments, an elderly woman hopping to find lost prescription deliveries. Each person received the same polite response. They needed to speak with Sheriff Corinne, who had officially designated my garage as a postal facility and could provide all the services they were seeking. By evening, I counted 17 different visitors who had come seeking postal services. I directed every single one to contact Corinne directly. My phone rang constantly. Corinne called 6 times, growing more frantic with each conversation. Her messages shifted from anger to desperation as she realized the trap she had created for herself. The beauty of the situation was that I was doing nothing wrong. I was not actually providing postal services or handling mail. I was simply acknowledging Corinne's official designation of my property and directing people to the appropriate authority, her. That night, I posted additional advertisements on more platforms. I made sure to include testimonials about Sheriff Corinne's thorough investigation and professional designation of my garage as a postal facility. I encouraged anyone needing postal services to contact her directly, since she was the expert who had identified my property as suitable for such operations. Within 24 hours, my simple plan had created a logistics nightmare that Corinne could not escape without admitting she had been completely wrong from the beginning. The next morning, I opened my garage door to find 12 people already waiting in my driveway. They all had the same question. Where were the postal services that had been advertised? I gave them all the same answer: talk to Sheriff Karen. By the third day, my driveway looked like a postal service convention. Cars lined both sides of the street as confused people searched for the free postal services I had advertised. The crowd grew larger each hour as word spread through social media about the mysterious county-designated post office that offered everything for free. Karen arrived at 7 in the morning, her patrol car pushing through the crowd of people who had gathered outside my garage. She stepped out looking frazzled, her usually perfect uniform wrinkled and her hair escaping from its bun. "Everyone needs to leave immediately," she announced through a bullhorn. "There are no postal services at this location." An elderly man with a walker approached her, but the advertisement said this was a sheriff-designated postal facility. I drove 30 miles to collect my veterans benefits check. Karen looked trapped. "Sir, there has been a misunderstanding." "Are you Sheriff Karen?" asked a young woman holding a crying baby. "The advertisement said you personally investigated and approved this postal operation. I need to pick up my baby's formula delivery that went missing." More people surrounded Karen, each asking about different postal services. A small crowd formed as she tried to explain that there were no postal services available, while simultaneously defending her original claim that my garage was operating as a post office. "If this is not a post office, why did you say it was?" asked a middle-aged man. "The advertisements include your badge number and everything." Karen's face turned red as she realized the impossible position she had created. She could not deny that my garage was a post office without admitting her original accusations were false. But she also could not provide the postal services these people were seeking. I stood in my garage doorway, watching the chaos unfold while maintaining perfect innocence. When people asked me directly about postal services, I politely referred them to Sheriff Karen, explaining that she was the authority who had designated my facility and could answer all their questions. The situation attracted media attention by noon. A local news reporter arrived with a camera crew, drawn by social media posts about the strange postal facility that promised free services but could not deliver them. "Sheriff, can you explain why this residential garage has been designated as a postal facility?" the reporter asked. Karen stumbled through an explanation that made no sense. She claimed my garage was operating illegally as a post office, but when pressed to explain why people could not access postal services there, she became increasingly flustered. "The homeowner is not authorized to provide postal services," she said. "But your own documentation states that postal services were already being provided here," the reporter replied, holding up a copy of Karen's cease and desist order. "Are you saying your investigation was incorrect?" Karen walked away from the interview without answering. The story exploded online. Local Facebook groups shared videos of the confused crowd, Karen's fumbling explanations, and my polite direction of visitors to speak with the sheriff. Comments poured in from people who had their own stories about Karen's aggressive policing and questionable interpretations of the law. By the end of the week, my simple revenge plan had created a public relations disaster that reached the county level. The sheriff's department received hundreds of calls from confused citizens asking about postal services and demanding explanations for Karen's contradictory statements. Karen made one final attempt to control the narrative by holding a press conference. She stood behind a podium at the county building, and tried to explain that my garage was not actually a post office, despite her previous claims. There were irregularities in the initial investigation, she said. The situation has been resolved. But the damage was done. Video clips of Karen's contradictory statements had been viewed thousands of times. Local newspapers picked up the story as an example of police overreach and poor decision-making. Citizens began questioning other cases where Karen had made unusual claims or taken aggressive action against law-abiding residents. My phone rang that evening. It was Deputy Martinez. "Sir, I wanted to let you know that this situation is being reviewed at the county level. There are going to be some changes." I thanked him for the call and hung up, knowing that Karen's career was about to face serious scrutiny. The absurd postal office case had become a symbol of everything wrong with abuse of authority in small-town law enforcement. The county investigation began the following Monday. 3 supervisors, a postal inspector, and an internal affairs officer arrived at my house to understand how a residential garage had been designated as an illegal postal facility by the local sheriff. I provided them with copies of all Karen's documentation, my evidence of harassment, the official postal service letters confirming my activities were legal, and video footage of her intimidating my customers and delivery drivers. The lead investigator, a stern woman named Captain Rodriguez, reviewed the materials in my garage while taking detailed notes. "Mr. Johnson, help me understand this situation. Sheriff Karen claimed your garage was operating as an unauthorized post office." "That is correct. She said my furniture restoration business constituted illegal postal operations." "And you receive how many packages per week?" 6 to 8 packages, mostly supplies and materials for furniture restoration." Captain Rodriguez looked around my organized garage, taking in the shelves of restored furniture, my workbenches, and clearly displayed business licenses. "This is obviously a legitimate home-based business," she said. "There is nothing here that resembles postal operations." The postal inspector nodded in agreement. "I have reviewed all the documentation. Nothing this gentleman does violates postal regulations. Sheriff Karen's interpretation of postal law is completely incorrect." Over the next week, the investigation expanded beyond my case. The county received formal complaints from other residents who had been harassed by Karen over equally absurd violations. A food truck owner who had been cited for operating an unauthorized restaurant in a designated food truck zone. A woman running a dog grooming service from her home who had been accused of operating an unlicensed veterinary clinic. The pattern was clear. Karen had been using her badge to intimidate law-abiding citizens based on her personal interpretations of laws and regulations that she fundamentally misunderstood. Deputy Martinez contacted me privately to provide additional information. He had been documenting Karen's questionable decisions for months, but had been afraid to report them officially. "She threatened to ruin my career if I contradicted her in public," he explained. "But after this postal office situation, I realized someone had to speak up." Martinez provided internal reports showing Karen's pattern of harassment, her refusal to accept correction from other officers, and her tendency to escalate minor situations into major confrontations. His testimony became crucial evidence in the county's assessment of Karen's fitness for duty. The local newspaper published a detailed investigation into Karen's cases over the previous 2 years. They found dozens of instances where her actions had been legally questionable, economically damaging to local businesses, and completely unsupported by actual law. Community support shifted dramatically. Neighbors who had initially supported Corinne's crackdown on suspicious activity began apologizing for their participation in the harassment campaign. Mrs. Henderson brought me a casserole and admitted she felt terrible about keeping logs of my visitors. "I thought I was helping fight crime," she said. "I had no idea she was just targeting your business for personal reasons." The county board scheduled a formal hearing to review Corinne's conduct. Local residents packed the meeting room, with dozens speaking about their experiences with her aggressive policing style and questionable legal interpretations. When my turn came to speak, I kept my statement simple. I presented the timeline of events, the documentation of harassment, and the official Postal Service letters confirming my business was completely legal. Sheriff Corinne created a problem that did not exist, harassed a law-abiding citizen, and wasted county resources investigating imaginary crimes, I concluded. The board voted unanimously to recommend Corinne's suspension, pending a full disciplinary review. 2 months later, I received the official notification. Sheriff Corinne had been terminated from her position effective immediately. The county had found multiple violations of policy, abuse of authority, and conduct unbecoming an officer. She was permanently barred from law enforcement positions within the county. Deputy Martinez was promoted to interim sheriff. His first official act was to visit my garage and formally apologize on behalf of the department. "Sir, I want you to know that what happened to you was completely wrong. Sheriff Corinne's actions do not represent the values of professional law enforcement." He handed me an official letter clearing my business of any violations and confirming that all of Corinne's citations and warnings were being expunged from county records. The local newspaper ran a follow-up story about the resolution of the garage post office case. They interviewed several residents who had been victims of Corinne's overzealous policing, creating a picture of systematic abuse of authority that had finally been stopped. My business recovered quickly. Customers who had been scared away by Corinne's harassment returned with apologies and new orders. Word of mouth about my creative resistance to police overreach actually brought in customers from neighboring counties who appreciated my stand against corruption. The UPS driver, who had been intimidated by Corinne's daily interrogations, now greets me with a smile and often asks about my latest furniture projects. The mail carrier stops to chat about antique values and sometimes asks advice about family heirlooms. Mrs. Henderson became one of my best customers, purchasing 3 refurbished chairs and referring her friends to my business. She still feels guilty about her role in Corinne's surveillance campaign, but I have forgiven her completely. The most satisfying outcome was the policy changes that resulted from my case. The county implemented new training requirements for all law enforcement officers, covering appropriate interpretation of municipal codes and business regulations. They established a citizen complaint process with external review to prevent future abuse of authority. My garage returned to its peaceful routine. Weekend mornings find me restoring antique furniture, photographing new pieces, and packaging items for shipment. The shelves are full of beautiful furniture waiting for new homes, and my small business continues to thrive. Sometimes I look at the corner where I kept Corinne's business cards during those chaotic weeks when confused visitors sought postal services. I smile remembering how her own absurd claims became the weapon that ended her career. The irony is perfect. Corinne tried to destroy my business by claiming my garage was something it was not. In the end, her false accusations destroyed her own career while making my business stronger than ever. Justice was served, not through violence or revenge, but through the simple power of holding someone accountable for their own words. Karen created her own downfall the moment she decided to abuse her authority against an innocent citizen. My garage is still not a post office, but it has become something better, a symbol of what happens when ordinary people refuse to be intimidated by corrupt authority figures who think their badges make them above the law.